not to. Cashmere High School. Austin Harrison. Austin Harrison, is it?
It is.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Honourable Mayor Leanne Dalziel and members of the City Council. My name is Austin Harrison and I'm here as a representative speaking to the Cashmere High School submission to the long-term plan. First of all, I'd just like to thank you as a council for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. I think it speaks wonders for the democratic process in New Zealand and in Christchurch that even non-voting young people get the opportunity not only to speak but to be heard, and I'd just like to thank you for that. I know among others you've heard from some water polo players this morning and the Christchurch Youth Council, and today I would like to elaborate and expand on the essence of what youth think about the future of the city. I feel particularly lucky today to be speaking here, as I had to change hearing times twice in order to be here because I got back from an overseas holiday at 1 o'clock this morning. You may see the bags under my eyes, but it was worth it because on my travels I visited some of the greatest cities in the world. Cities such as London, Glasgow, Dubai, even Bandar Seri Begawan of Brunei, and I left each of these cities thinking, wow, what an incredible place to be, what an amazing city. And I'm sure, like everyone in this room, that is the response that I want people to have when they come to Christchurch now, but also in 10 years' time and beyond. The long-term plan, without a doubt, provides us with the buildings, the facilities, the infrastructure to give us that dream city that we are looking for. And it's fairly financially sensible. However, as you well know, the books are not quite balanced. And when I was attending a community outreach meeting about 6 weeks ago, it occurred to me that the central issue with the long-term plan was going to be savings. With a $1.2 billion shortfall, of course you're looking for places to save. So that was the exact question that I posed to the Cashmere High Student Council. And they came up with the idea that probably targeting one large saving area would be a superior way to save some money. And we decided that $253 million worth of brand new stadium would be worth the wait. And hopefully prevent some of the asset sales, or at least help to balance the books a little in the long-term plan. We went out with petition papers, and within the space of one 6.5-hour school day, 430 students looked up from their phones and peeled away from Facebook and signed their support to our submission, which was quite incredible. I'm aware, of course, of the challenges that are faced when trying to manipulate anchor projects. It's these projects that are often inhibited by things like Crown agreements and SERA, but the submission, if nothing else, is really to show how much young people care about the future of our city. The level of support that I received when putting together the submission surprised even me, and no doubt will surprise some of you too. But I think that there's a pretty clear reason for that, and the bottom line is that in 10, 15, 20 years' time, it's my generation that will inherit this city. And naturally, we would like to live in, vote for and make up a city and a council which is rich in assets and low in debt, not one which is rich in debt and, not one which has low levels of assets and requires you to be rich to pay your rates. The tagline for the long-term submission process was to find a balance between what we have to do and what we would like to do, and to make some smart choices. Smart choices can include more rates, yes. Some asset sales, yes. But there is beauty in moderation. And this is all that teens really want to be assured of. Whether it be a stadium deferral or movement of another anchor project or something completely different, what we save now, we save for the future. Cashmere High, I believe, is fairly representative of all young people, in that we care and want to look after the future of Christchurch. And all that we want of you is that you care about the future and look after the creation of the city that we do and will continue to call home. Thank you.
Thank you. That's excellent. I always remind myself that I will be 70 in 2030, and that means that this city is not being rebuilt for me. It's really being rebuilt for your generation, and I think you've made that point really, really well. Has anyone got some questions for Austin? Raph.
Thanks very much for that, and hope you enjoyed your holiday. The thing that's coming out of here for me is that, and I think actually the whole submission process, even actually Malcolm's one before, is that we've created this huge wish list for big projects, which clearly we cannot afford. And yet, what people actually want are kind of the basic stuff, the community facilities, stuff that people do in their everyday life. And I mean, so for young people, what are the sort of things that they would be focused on if you weren't looking at kind of the big ticket items?
I think young people are not so different to anyone else when it comes to, we want all of our homes rebuilt is obviously priority number one. We want community facilities and places to go. We want things to happen. For me, I see a lot of young people who are super keen for things like the arts precinct to get underway, because the more events and sort of cultural happenings that we can see, the more energy there is in the city and the better place it is for young people to live. So those things definitely take priority, particularly when we have a stadium now which is working and doing the job that it needs to do.
Glenn? Glenn?
Sorry. Glenn. Thank you, Austin. Thank you. And I realise you've just hopped off the plane. You've gone to places a bit further than me in a recent trip, but I did come back with a few impressions of things like we've got the best water in the world, you know, sort of connectivity for getting around is imperative, these kind of things, issues about homelessness, graffiti, etc. Have you got some impressions from your travels right now about how you would like Christchurch to be?
Oh, look, public transport actually is a really good point. Travelling around the UK particularly, they just have phenomenal public transport, and that's not just with the tubes and things in London, it's the trams in Manchester and Glasgow. They just have fantastic public transport systems, and that would make my life a lot easier. You know, I don't drive, so it would be great to see, you know, a few more bus routes and things while we keep seeing them being taken away. But those things are tricky because obviously, you know, that's just on account of dwindling numbers of people using them. Most people do drive. But I think one thing that strikes me is I had just a day yesterday visiting Melbourne, and they have some fantastic but really quite simple architecture in that they have your typical sort of tilt slab buildings, and then they'll come and they'll paint it so that it looks like someone's taken a bright yellow Vivid and just done a big line down the side of it. And that looks so much better than a city which is full of beige and grey. And so I would love to see some of that sort of quirkiness taken into account when we put together our city as well.
Yeah. Phil?
Thank you, Austin. Can I just ask you, while you're overseas too, you would have seen a lot of heritage buildings that have been kept. One that is in our plan is the Provincial Chambers building on Wilson Ave there. And I think from memory in the long-term plan, it's going to cost a lot of money to build, like about 100 million. So I know, I don't know if you overseas, if you learned about how, in fact, to keep some of the heritage, they actually spent a lot of years in just protecting it. So
Absolutely.
Have you got any ideas about what we should do with some of our heritage buildings, like the old provincial building?
I don't think it can be stressed enough how important those heritage buildings and sites are. You know, you visit a place like England and it's just incredible because of the history of the place. You walk around and you go, there are 1,000 years of history here, and who's walked through that door, what's happened in that building. And I think it's really important for the future of the city, especially one which is fairly tourism focused to some extent, that we keep some of those heritage buildings and reminders of our history, as well as brand new state-of-the-art facilities.
Ani?
Yeah, thank you for your submission and all the work that's gone behind it. It was interesting that you started by talking about being grateful for democracy and the chance to speak to us. Given that this is a government decision, I was just really interested if you've engaged with government at all, whether through the minister or through the school?
I haven't a lot. I was essentially drawn to attention of the long-term plan submissions because I was invited along to a community board outreach meeting, and I just sort of sat there thinking, well, this is a hopeless situation. I don't want a city that's scaling into debt. What can I do? And they said, make a submission. So I did.
Great. There is actually an opportunity for you, and actually this might be a nice opportunity to kind of put it on the table. But the government soon will be releasing a transition plan, and the transition recovery plan is actually all about how we get from where we are now to a future state after the Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Act is repealed next year. And I would certainly invite you and others to think very carefully about, you know, yes, you've made a submission to the council around our long-term plan, but actually making a submission to the government about the transition recovery plan will certainly let the government know what the people of Christchurch have been telling us through this plan, which is what are the priorities for Christchurch and how does Christchurch take back the responsibility for the decision making in these important areas, because I think that's the message that we have received loud and clear over the last 2 weeks and really backed up by your own submission today.
Which is great, and I think it's great that you've engaged in this process, but if I move a resolution to defer the stadium, I'll be told it's out of order. So
Yanni,
we need to...
Yanni, I've just given the young gentleman an opportunity to think about how he can engage with central government on this very issue.
Which is great.
Because we've already put a deferral on this in terms of the long-term plan. We are obviously going to consider to see whether we can move it out even further. We're going to try, you know, but we've got a whole lot of different issues that we've got to take into account. So we're going to try and do that. But the transition period is an extremely important period. And what I don't want anyone to think is that they come here to the council and sort of recommend to the council that we adopt a particular position and then don't go to government and recommend they adopt a particular position around the transition. It's a golden opportunity that's about to happen, and it will be happening very, very soon.
I will keep an eye out and I will make a submission.
Excellent.
Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Thank you very, very much. Right, so look, I made a terrible mistake before, and thank you very much for that, and please feed back to your school that we're very pleased that you made the submission on behalf of the school. So
thank you.
Thank you. And now I owe an apology to Greg Snedden and Claire Moat, is it?